Hi guys, I'm Simone Niles and I'm really excited to be here today with womenswear fashion designer specialising in digital fashion, Adam Andrascik. How are you today?
I'm good, how are you?
I'm really good, thank you. So it's really lovely to be here. I just wanted to jump straight to the beginning of your journey and just ask what interested you to start in the fashion industry as a whole?
So I knew I wanted to do something in the arts, but I was pretty terrible at painting and figurative drawing. It was actually a suggestion from my parents who had said that I had an interest in clothing and that maybe I needed to find some sort of discipline that had constraints to it, so that I would have to design essentially inside of a box. We know that at the end of the day that it has to be a garment. It has to have some sort of maybe utility purpose or aesthetic purpose. So I just thought, okay, why not? And just kind of jumped into it. And I found that when I started, I did a BA at FIT, and I really found the whole process exciting. I liked the technical aspect of it as well. So it really fits, the analytical side, but also the creativity side, which is kind of what took me into digital fashion. But it's a discipline that, for me, gives me the ability to design within it without almost being aimless in what I'm trying to accomplish at the end.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I think myself, I started off doodling and stuff like that as well, just within that creative expression. But it's interesting you spoke about the discipline of it, because I know the journey from the beginning to where you are now must have been, there's no specific timeline or rule book necessarily to that journey of success. So can you maybe just talk us through how you started to where you are now, or just give us a brief just walk through of how that happened?
Sure. So I did my BA, and I was in New York City, and I had done a year abroad in Italy, in Florence, where we worked with knitwear factories, and I realized that the kind of aesthetic that I was pursuing and the kind of work that I designed made more sense for a European customer. So I had to figure out a way to get back. And I was looking at MA courses, and I had applied to Central St. Martin's, and I got onto the MA course there. I moved to London, did that for a year and a half. When I graduated, I had a little bit of hype from that graduate collection, so I started my own label. I ran it in London for about 4 years. And when I was doing that, I got approached by Guy Laroche, which is a French luxury brand, and they were looking to hire a new creative director, so they pitched the idea to me. And I took it over. I moved to Paris. I ran that for 3 years. When I finished with that, I moved back to the UK, moved back to London, and I did freelance work and some agency work and things like that. And then a position opened up at Ravensbourne, and I had really missed working with students. When you're inside your own studio and you're running your own label, you have interns, and that's great. But a lot of the times you're just kind of on your own. And when I was at Guy, we had a lot more, atelier staff, and you had a lot of young designers and people in there, so it was a lot more exciting. And I had missed that once I had left. So I applied for Ravensbourne, and I moved. I came over there as a senior lecturer, and then the pandemic hits, and so everything goes online. And the then program director, Lee Lapthorne, we start speaking together about what do we do for final year collection. I said, I've been reading about this software called Marvelous Designer, Clo 3D. We could digitize their collections. I'll teach myself the software, and then I'll teach it to the students. So it was a big voluntary sort of project, and it just kind of snowballed from there and became really exciting. The students loved it, and then I started to realize there's something here. There's something really exciting in this field, and I just started to pivot my direction. And that's where I am now as a pathway leader of the digital technology for fashion pathway at Ravensbourne.
Wow, that's so interesting. Being a fashion promotion student myself, I have just completed my unit on a lot of 3D rendering and fashion design digitally, and I find it so fascinating. It's almost like it's taking over. But before that would have almost taken over, can you talk to us a little bit about the label that you had? Because I just find that really interesting. It must be such a big role of responsibility and a journey in itself amongst your other paths. Can you tell us a bit about that and how you would describe it to someone that's never heard of it before?
So it was very minimal, deconstructed, kind of Margiela, Helmut Lang-esque, ideas there. It was based off of my MA collection at St. Martin's, so I showed that, and it was these big bonded, deconstructed pieces that had layers that were hanging out, and the insides of them were finished with sort of netting, so it gave this sort of trompe l'oeil effect. And the whole inspiration for the collection was this project that Schiaparelli had done with Salvatore Dali. And he had drawn a tear, so like a tear in a piece of paper, and she had made it as an actual textile. And so that's where I started with the basis of that. And I really liked that, technique, and I wanted to make it contemporary, bring it up to, which the time period was 2010. So I did that, and I then decided that I wanted to try and make this into a real offering that wasn't just a very conceptual avant-garde piece. So I got rid of all the bonding and made the pieces out of silk, and re-envisioned how it could fit. And within the first 2 seasons, we ended up selling to Selfridges, and then a bunch of other international stores, and it kind of just picked up speed from there. I was doing some presentations at London Fashion Week, and then I realized that, the buyers and the customers who were responding to it were actually in Paris. And so I started to make the move there and started to do presentations there, which is what caught the eye of Guy Laroche, because I had moved from that sort of young London upstart scene to the more Parisian one, and it just fit my work better going forward. So I don't necessarily recommend it for everyone, but if you don't fit into that sort of, I guess you like that really specific sort of London creative scene, maybe Paris is something that you should look at as well. But I know other designers who've gone to Milan, some moved to New York. It's really just where your work fits and who's really responding to it. Yeah,
definitely. Especially back to the beginning when you spoke about how much discipline could be within fashion, because it has to fit on a specific body and it has to be a garment that you have to functionally wear. I think it's really interesting how you can go back and almost deconstruct things to find it as a whole in the end, because it doesn't have to be perfect in the beginning. It can be very much loose bits of inspiration, as you said, from Schiaparelli and the tear and stuff like that. I think it's really interesting how you can build that and grow on it, and then have something as magnificent as being a part of London and Paris Fashion Week. I think as a student myself and a lot of young creatives, it's almost like this electric energy you get from these fashion weeks, and it can be quite overwhelming. I did a little bit of like dressing and stuff like that before the pandemic, and it was just really interesting just to be a part of a couple of days of those events. But I know it must be so different for you being a designer doing that sort of thing, because it's maybe a lot more responsibility and a lot more pressure. Could you tell us a bit about how that experience was within those weeks of preparing for it and just being in that moment?
When we did shows, it was much better, because you have that massive build up, but then the show's done in 15 minutes, and then you were just doing press backstage. But it's amazing how sort of deflated and empty I would feel after that show, because you gear yourself up to that, you do it, and then as soon as you walk out of the venue, so the first show that we did in Paris for Guy Laroche, we showed at the Grand Palais, which is where Chanel shows. So it was this incredible affair. I'm walking out there, I'm 30 years old, I'm waving, I've got Tim Blanks coming backstage, interviewing me, all this kind of stuff. You walk out, you get into a cab, and you go to the restaurant where all of your friends are, and you get out of the cab, and people are just going about their day. They're going to buy baguettes and things, and you're just sitting there going, oh, okay. I guess this is it. That was it.
That's a crazy transition.
Yeah. But I mean, it's something that if you can, if you want to do that presentation, it's always good to think about how does it work specifically for your brand. I mean, should you even be doing a catwalk show? Maybe you shouldn't. Maybe you shouldn't even have models. I don't know. I think that's something that I realized a bit too late when I had my own label. I was always like, oh, it has to be that catwalk show.
Okay.
And I thought, well, you know, you don't really need to do that now. I think a lot of young creatives, they kind of push away from that structure, which I think is a lot more exciting, and it gets them noticed more. So that's what I would suggest, you know, going forward. Just see what works for you.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Touching on the fact that you said that maybe where you went a little bit wrong was having that show, what other things would you recommend for displaying that final collection, which is such a big deal because you would have put so much time into it, as you would have explained, so much energy and effort. What other ways do you think would be good to kind of explore that final production?
I mean, it's all about knowing who to target.
Yeah.
I mean, if you want to sell and you want to get in one of those stores, you got to do the legwork and find out who those people are. You got to find out who they're selling to. And it might just be a very simple thing of, okay, so I've done, you know, my research on 4 labels and I found out that 3 of them all show at the same showroom in Paris. Well, I should get my clothing in that showroom because that's where the buyer is clearly buying it from.
Yeah.
So it might just be something easy as that. So maybe you actually don't do a presentation at all. All you do is you save the money for sales, or you talk to a sales agent and you work out some deal. Okay, I know you take 12% commission on this, but I want to get in this store and I know you really like the stuff, so what if I give you a higher commission and I don't have to pay you the fee? It's all about that negotiation. Just figuring out, you know, what is it you want to do? Do you want to sell the clothing? Do you want to just promote your brand so that somebody notices you and you get a job? So you got to pinpoint all that and then really pick the right tool to go after them. Because I think a lot of, you know, young designers, a lot of ones that I knew did this too. You just do a show and you think that you would get press. I remember I did a video once. I had a friend who worked at British Vogue. I got really excited and I sent her this email and I was like, oh, I've done this video. You guys should see it. You should look at it. You should put it on Vogue. She was like, it's not a story. Like, why would I put that on? I was like, oh God, I just spent like $5,000 and you don't even care.
Oh my God.
So it's that kind of thing. It's like, you know, make sure you do the research first so that you don't build this giant production and then everyone goes, well, that's not a story. Why would I write about that?
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, it could be so overwhelming, I can imagine, especially for young designers and designers amongst me that are students maybe thinking about creating their final collection after 3rd year and stuff like that, or for their 3rd year collection and not necessarily knowing the path to take. But I know for our stage, especially as students and young designers, when you are creating amongst your peers and stuff like that, it can be a lot of collaboration that is pushed within universities, especially just throughout your peers and stuff like that. Could I ask how you felt about the essence of collaboration, or did you feel more like your peers were more competition, especially, as you said, maybe researching brands throughout that London and Paris Fashion Week and seeing, oh, what are they doing? How are they displaying their collections? How are they doing their final presentations? Did you feel more inspired, or do you feel like it's more of a competition in that sense?
Probably a bit of both. I would say that in terms of competition and collaboration, if I go back to the MA, it was extreme competition.
Okay.
We were all friendly, and we'd all go out at night, but everyone's work was completely different, and we all wanted to get into that show. So it was cutthroat. I mean, nobody sabotaged anything. You know, it didn't get that bad.
Yeah.
But that was very much what was pushed on us going forward. That was how that program was run.
Okay.
I don't know. Some people, that works really well for them. You know, they flourish in those situations. I like that. I like a good competition. I want to have a very clear idea of like, this is the person I'm trying to beat, and this is my enemy, and you know, it helps me. It motivates me to go forward. In terms of collaboration, I like to collaborate with people who are not specifically directly in my field. So, you know, if I'm putting together a collection, I want to go to the hair designer, I want to go to the makeup artist, and I want to say, right, so this is what I'm doing, this is the garments, this is the feeling, what are you bringing to this? What do you suggest? I want to hear that, because that only makes it better, because sometimes you can get sort of siloed, or you're like, you know, you've got blinders on, and oh, it has to be this, and you're not really aware of what's happening in, you know, a cultural context of either society or design, and maybe they have a better idea about it. So I think collaboration there is extremely important. It depends on the person too. I mean, if you're in a university, maybe I think if you collaborate between disciplines, it makes sense.
Yeah.
Like I wish that I would have had the opportunity to collaborate with film students when I was at FIT, but we just didn't do that because we kept thinking, oh, well, we're doing fashion. What does that have to do with film? Well, pretty much everything.
Everything.
You know, you're making an image, you're making a world, you're trying to get people excited about it. So I would say that, you know, when you have that time, you really only get it right now because everyone tries to recapture that feeling at university, always. To really collaborate with those disciplines outside of what you have, because you have no idea how that's going to influence your work or maybe even define your aesthetic more than what you already have.
Yeah, I think it's really a beautiful thing, collaboration. I think there's a lot of beauty in it, especially when you've come from two different worlds with someone, whether that be, as you said, culturally or from different societies even. You can really just benefit so much off of each other in a really non-competitive way. And I think that it should really be pushed more in universities, because when you graduate and you're out of that, you're going to want to build a team, you're going to want to get ideas, and you're going to want to keep it exciting and fresh. And sometimes you can't really do that if everyone around you has exactly the same vision. Sometimes it's nice to just bounce those ideas off each other, and you can get a bit more out of the box thinking, even though it can be something that is quite disciplined as well, which is interesting. But speaking of universities, because I know a lot of our viewers will be within my aspect, a student or maybe just graduated or just a young and up and coming creative, I wanted to talk about that, bridging that gap between industry and an educational perspective, because I know that especially within fashion, it's so highly competitive. A lot of people do struggle to get that initial, not first break, but just even get their name out there, to get that first opportunity or that first photo shoot or that first collaboration. So what advice maybe do you have for those people that are just trying to get their name out there initially within that educational stage to break out into the industry?
I think it's about knowing what you want first.
Yeah.
If it's about building a brand, or if it's about getting publicity for your label, it's about knowing where your aesthetic fits and who's going to be interested in it.
Yeah.
And then the second thing is just be really persistent and don't stop and try and get in front of them. I mean, I've been so persistent in points that I have, there was an initiative that would never work with me after because of how annoying I was to get my work in front of them. And they never ended up picking my stuff anyways, but it didn't really matter. It's just, it got my name out there and people knew what the work was. So you really need to target who it is that you want to see that work, and you need to be persistent about getting in touch with them. A lot of students, I find, tend to just send an email and then they don't hear anything back. I mean, you should be emailing every week to see, okay, and if that person's not working, you find somebody else in the company who you can get in touch with, and you start to strike up that conversation. There has to be something. There's always a middle ground that you could talk about with somebody that they'll relate to it. A lot of times I find, as well as if you go to them, you ask them questions, they tend to be more responsive. If you don't go to them and say, oh, I want to be working for your company, like, how do I work for your company? What avenue do I need to go down? How do I get my work in front of you? What do I need to do? A lot of times people are happy about that, and they're interested to hear that. But you also need to know, something about the company. The other thing I found that's really easy, like, you want to get your foot in the door somewhere, if you can get that interview with them, make sure you know something about a collection or a design or a piece of work that they've done that's maybe not so well known, and talk to them about it. Because there's nothing more that creatives like to talk about than themselves. So, and it is a bit of flattery, but if you know it, then they're going to go, okay, right. So they've got good taste. So now I'm interested. Okay, let's try this out.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it's really, you have to be persistent and you have to not stop. And even if you're not getting anywhere, every day brings it brings a change and a different set of challenges, but it also brings a different set of opportunities. And you don't know who's looking at you and who's weighing everything up. So you have to pretend that you're on stage the whole time and make sure that you're making those decisions. And they make sense for you as well, because at the end of the day, if you want to work for a label, maybe it doesn't make sense to actually start your own thing and get yourself in a ton of debt just to get a job. Maybe it makes more sense to kind of figure out a way to intern for that person before. But it's really weighing those options up and seeing, what really works for what you're trying to accomplish.
Yeah, thanks. I think that's some really, really valuable information for anyone that's listening, because sometimes those little gems are so hard to get, especially when there's no specific guide or rule book into how you get that first break or how you get in there. You kind of just have to like wiggle your way through and just see what happens, and you never know who you'll meet or who you'll network with as well. So I think that's really, really valuable for anyone who's listening, definitely. Especially throughout placements and stuff, because even I am searching for that. It's this combination of how are you going to find someone that fits you, or how will you fit them? What can you add to their team that they don't already have, which can be a bit difficult to figure out. But I think that is really, really interesting. But a bit more about education. I know that you teach with Ravensbourne, so can you talk to us a bit about your pathway and what exactly you do within that?
So on the digital technology for fashion pathway, we have a first cohort in now, so there's around 20 students on it. And the approach for it right now is, I'm a believer that if you're going to enact positive change with these students' lives, you have to get the newest technology into their hands as fast as possible. And that is the main goal of this entire pathway that I'm putting together, that I'm running. I need to find out what's happening in the industry, what technology they're using, what's the output, what's the outcome of it, and how I can get that into my students' hands. So if that means I have to teach it to myself first, fine. That means we have to procure those licenses, we have to team up with industry people to bring them in so that they can explain to the students what this means going forward, how this technology evolves. That's what we do as well. So it's very much about making sure that they have access to that. And what we do in this pathway is, we are at a stage in fashion and in this industry that I've only seen one other time. And that was the invention of digital printing. Now, when digital printing exploded, you had designers like Mary Katranzer and Peter Pilato come out, and all they did their work was these extreme digital prints with thousands of colors in them that you could never actually make with a screen. So that digital technology had given them the ability to create something that could never have been created before. There has not been a sea change like that since digital fashion. We're in something now which I think has even an even wider potential. It's everything. It's sustainability. It's access. It's inclusivity. You could design an entire collection using this software, and you don't need to actually purchase all the fabric. You don't need to have connections to a factory to realize this work. You can make something that is as polished, if you work on it, as something that Nike will produce. There's never been a time in fashion where the playing field has been so leveled with a piece of technology until now. That's what makes me really excited. And that's what I'm trying to instill in the students. I want to give them that technology. And what I want them to do is sort of a sandbox approach. Build. Bring me something. What do you want to do for your FMP, your final major project? How are you going to take this digital technology and work it with traditional? Or are you not going to use that traditional at all? Is it about building a sustainable process? Maybe you want to make a factory that's all made to order. Maybe you want to create digital garments that you can sell or people can wear. Or maybe it's a process in which people who, through one issue or another, maybe can't actually sketch or design. So you're using this technology to give them the ability to create within this field. So that's what I want, because I can't sit here and think about or envision what all of the possibilities are. But if I give them the technology and they have it in their hands and they understand it, maybe they can. And we can build something together that's more exciting and visionary than either of us could have come up with on our own. So that's really the main focus for this course going forward. And it is really something that is evolving as the industry changes, and it's very reactive to what's going on within that industry. So if there's something new that happens, or there is new opportunities in terms of employment, I try to make sure that we're bringing that technology in so that the students, like you said, they go to that internship and maybe they go, well, actually, I'm the only one here who can do this sort of digital production. So then they go from being a student who's exceptional to a student who's irreplaceable. And that's really the main goal of this program.
Yeah, I think that's so interesting. There's such high quality, I think, in that. And I think even throughout past years, a lot of universities, throughout a lot of fashion courses as well, stick to a lot more of a traditional route. And I just love that this has been something that's so modern and fresh, but you're implementing it in that pathway that's like, it's not necessarily an option. It's something that you consciously keep making the effort to teach them, which I think is so, so, so valuable, because we've all gone down that traditional route. We've all known about all these different techniques and stuff and being hands-on with things, but something digital is things that I find a lot of people can kind of shy away from, because it's something new, it's something that's not really as talked about as much, but now it's something that's almost taking over, and I think it's so, so, so exciting, because it's so, so, so valuable. I get so excited about it as well. My latest project, one of my units of fashion promotion, was how to rebrand a collection using digital garments as well. And the possibilities are endless, which is really, really exciting. But yeah, I just wanted to talk to you about your impact as a lecturer and how you feel like you might stand out from others, because I know that I've heard that you're quite passionate about your connection with them and how you can influence them. What do you feel like stands out with the way you teach and the way you bring that work forward?
That's a good question. I think you probably have to ask them too. I'm not exactly sure. I mean, I guess ideally what I want to say, that I want to leave with them, is I want them to have a curiosity. Okay. I want them to have that curiosity and that tenacity to go out and to figure it out for themselves. Yeah. So that if they're in a position where they don't know how to make this thing work, and it doesn't have to necessarily even be digital, this can be in any facet or walk in their life, they decide that they're going to be proactive and they're going to change it. Very simple example of this. I got Guy Laroche because I couldn't get anything else. Now, what that means is that I was trying to apply for London Fashion Week with my own label, but I didn't have the press, I didn't have the connections to get into it. So I realized that maybe I needed a new PR person or a new salesperson, and that's when I shifted my entire focus from London to Paris. Now, if I would have just decided that, okay, London's not working, so I'm done, I'm going to give up, I would have never gotten Guy, because it never would have worked in London. It had to be Paris. So it's that you have to be open to the fact that, like, even when something fails, maybe that's the point. Maybe that's the point where it causes you to shift. You decide to start working with this other person who you had never thought of before. You become curious about another way of working or another way of presenting, and then that gets you in front of someone who would have never taken notice until that point. And the thing that really did it for us was we realized that I couldn't afford to do a catwalk show, and we could only get a few models for a presentation, and we had a bunch of leather jackets. But I also had a studio that was right next to this really great tattoo parlor that just opened, and I would talk to the guys all the time. And I just walked in one day and say, okay, I've got this crazy idea. Why don't you get on a train with me and come to Paris in 2 weeks? And why don't you tattoo all the stuff live? Wow. And they did it. And we also, miraculously right on that street too, was a massive Harley-Davidson dealership. And they could all ride motorcycles. Yeah. So we went over the street as well, used their licenses to roll the motorcycles across, I can't remember what street it was in Paris, one of the avenues. Yeah. Across the avenue, directly into the showroom, and had all of these motorcycles set up. Amazing. And then they were tattooing leather garments in real time, and Style.com showed up because of that. And it was all because I couldn't make it in London. Everything, all my avenues had dried up. It wasn't working anymore. And so I said, well, let's try Paris. And the next day we were on Style.com, and then the next day I got a phone call from the PR who also represented Guy Laroche. And if I had never worked with them, it would have never went that way. Yeah. And everything exploded from there. So it's about retaining that curiosity of why these certain things aren't working, but also, to not get disheartened when things don't seem to pan out, because I honestly think 9 times out of 10 it means that something else that's better is going to come up, and that's going to work for you. Yeah, I love that you said that, because I know that even for me and a lot of other students, or just
creatives in general find it so hard sometimes to just have that self-belief of if you fall down like 9 times, you just get back up that 10th time, and it might just be something even better than you might have imagined. And it can be really difficult to find that within yourself, especially when you've got life going on and everything, obviously all the other aspects of just living every day. How am I going to find it in myself to just get up and keep going, and as you said, keep being persistent and keep emailing and figuring out how do I have that one thing that they might be missing, or how do I stand out of the box to add to that specific company. And I think it's really nice that you've spoken about those, not necessarily failures, but things that just might not have worked out, and how it shifted you into a different direction, because obviously throughout your career it's been so successful and you're still learning every day as everyone else is, but it's really nice to just reflect on those things that might not have gone right and how you can help someone else as well. That's not going right for you, but I can tell you this story and figure it out. We can figure it out together, which is really, really lovely. In terms of maybe something more personal, is there anything that you might say to yourself throughout your everyday life, or just throughout those journeys that have kept you going, in terms of we all have bad days and just trying to figure it out? And of course, it's a lot easier said than done when it's over. Okay, it hasn't worked, but I've gotten this great opportunity now and it's worked out for the best. When it might not have gone that great, or when you might have been in your lower stages throughout your career, was there anything that in particular that kept you going, that pushed you to keep that persistency?
It's really just wait one more day. Let's see what happens tomorrow. Because I've been at those points at my lowest, and then something you only need that one yes. You can have 100 no's, and you have that one yes, everything changes. But you're not going to get that yes if you're not just going to keep going and being aware of what's happening. So if it's not working out, you just have to see what happens the next day, and then it eventually gets to that point where if it's just not working, then okay, well, let's just see where else this can take me. Is there some other thing that I'm interested in that maybe this will make my work better? So it's just about being open to opportunities out there, and seeing where it goes. I mean, because there's not much else you can do besides being really persistent with the work going forward.
Thanks so much for sharing that. Honestly, I think it's so much more important for people to hear these type of stories as well, because it can be so much more relatable in terms of just even at that beginning stage, there's a lot more hardship because you have less experiences to fall back on in terms of, oh, that didn't work out, so I can keep going now. But I think that's so valuable. So thank you so much for sharing that. I think even for me, that means a lot, because you just one more day, as you said, and you can just keep going and keep going. But on a lighter note, I just wanted to ask you a little bit more about digital fashion, because I know that's one of your main specialties, of course. I just wanted to ask you, throughout time it's taken over and have gotten so popular, do you feel like we could lose that essence of physical fashion? Do you feel like that can be something that can not evaporate, but do you think it can take over to a sense where we lose that in-person contact? I know we spoke about the pandemic previously, but we have become in such a digital age and digital time within social media, TikTok, and everything is just so digital. Virtual reality is taking over, NFTs, and I'm sure you would have heard it all, but do you feel like it can have a negative impact in terms of taking over or anything, or what's your opinion on that?
I mean, I like to look at things like when ready-to-wear came out, it didn't actually kill couture, it made it more valuable. And I think that that's kind of what digital does, is it makes other facets of the industry valuable. In the same way that, I think the big argument against NFTs, besides the environmental issues, was that, you make that digital image, and it makes it less valuable in some way because it's digital. Well, I mean, I can't remember where I read it, but it was a very interesting argument against it, and basically said, well, if you go into IKEA and you see a picture of Starry Night that you can buy and hang on your wall, does that make the Starry Night that's hanging in the MoMA less worthy or more? It makes it more, because now there's really only one. So I think there's an interesting concept there. I think that it is, in terms of digital fashion, it's another, well, it depends on how you use it, but it's another delivery system or another avenue, in the same way that, radio wasn't killed by TV,
Yeah.
Podcasts didn't kill TV series. Movies weren't killed by TV series.
Yeah.
Vice versa. It's just a different media that keeps evolving, and I think you have people who engage with that may have not engaged with traditional fashion. Mm-hmm. You have people who do both, and people who pivot into it. But I think that it has such interesting possibilities that have not really been touched yet. I mean, the obvious thing is everyone just immediately tries to commercialize it and commoditize it. Oh, we're gonna sell filters. Like, okay, well, yeah, fine.
Yeah.
But there's going to be something else that it grows out of, and that's what the whole course that I teach on is what we're trying to push is, okay, but what's the next thing? Well, what's the thing that people are going to get really excited about that maybe you can use NFT technology for that you haven't used before? Because we're very much at that beginning of, websites get created and social media comes out and you have a lot of people saying, well, what happens when you get bored of all of your friends' vacation pictures? And you go, well, you'll never get bored of that because people are never bored of other people. They're not bored of gossip. So social media exploded and it became much bigger than anyone thought. Mm-hmm. I think digital fashion is the same way because I think people are looking at it saying, oh, well, aren't you going to get bored of, the filters and all that kind of stuff? It's like, yeah, but you don't know how this is going to evolve.
Exactly.
How it starts to slot into other areas and other industries that nobody's thought of yet.
Yeah.
And I think that's really exciting. But I also think that in terms of, young creatives and having the ability to actually fund an idea, you have more options now with digital fashion than you do with the traditional fashion route. Now you could be someone like Charlie Cohen who puts together a company called Restless, and they just pitched and they just got an investment, a seed investment for $3.5 million. She's been running the company for less than a year. Wow. So that's the thing I get excited for my students as well. It's like, you should need to think about this kind of thing. Because if you can pull it off, if you can make a product in the class or some way of working, and you can successfully pitch it to someone, you can start your company today. Not in 5 years, not in 10 years, and you all have to prove, and all these brands, these wholesalers keep coming back to you and saying, oh, we're going to wait another season. Like, yeah, okay, yeah, I'm sure you are.
Yeah.
But with this, it gives you the agency to really kind of be in the driver's seat. And if you want to build something now, you can do it. And that's what really excites me. We've never really had that possibility, within fashion ever. Yeah.
I think that's really exciting. It's almost as if we're just touching the surface within this, and there's so much more to go as well. So many more avenues that it can be taken in, and I can't wait to see the outcomes of even just maybe in a year's time where we are with it as well. I think it's just really exciting, really, really exciting, especially when you said being able to be in the driver's seat within such a short space of time is so much more inspirational, I think, than having to set aside that time of your life just for that outcome. I think if you can do it now, it's so much more motivational. Even within online fashion brands and stuff like that, so many people my age are just becoming entrepreneurs and owning that, and it's just all based online, and it might not necessarily be digital fashion, but it's just kind of like you don't have to physically feel or see or touch anything anymore. You just have to have that tone of voice and that exposure, which I think social media brings, and everything digital does bring already. And also just that money as well. It's so much less you have to invest as well, and you can do so much trial and error throughout that digital fashion. So I wanted to just get in touch with you about a debate. We did a poll on Instagram, and the results were actually 50, which was quite exciting. But it was just on the basis of, do you think digital fashion can take over fast fashion, and how those two can kind of like work together in terms of replacing it? Just what was your opinion on that? Because our poll results were quite literally 50-50, which was quite interesting. I know fast fashion can be quite problematic in a lot of different ways in terms of sustainability and stuff like that. So what was your opinion on that?
I think it depends on how you look at digital fashion and fast fashion. So if you're looking at it from a purely instant gratification viewpoint, and it's about, okay, well, I can buy something new immediately. Yeah, you could, I think, replace parts of it, because you're essentially replacing one item for another, but it's all about that gratification that's instant that you're buying.
Yeah.
But if you're looking at it from a utility aspect, well, you can't actually physically wear a digital garment. So
Exactly.
I've always found that argument very odd. And it feels very, also it feels very detached from reality. A lot of these fast fashion brands survive because the people who purchase that clothing, well, they don't have the money to purchase sustainable goods.
Yeah.
So instead of sort of shaming that customer, you just need to make that avenue or that manufacturing apparatus better. You need to go into those companies and change them and make them better. But you can't do it from that outside, which I find really strange. People will say, I'm very against fast fashion. Oh, here's a couture garment that I've made that no one's ever going to wear.
Exactly.
What are you talking about? It's not a serious conversation. If you want to do something, then get into it. Use the digital technology to adjust it and maybe make the processes more efficient or less wasteful.
Yeah.
There are so many problems that you could use that technology for. But yeah, getting back to the question, I'm not surprised that it's split because I think it really depends on how you look at it. If it's about the utility, I can't see any way that it would replace it. I think that is honestly absurd. But yeah, if it's about that, instant gratification, well, then you're basically putting it into the same category as, if I buy a song on Apple Music. Well, that's essentially the same thing. So instead of using the money that I would have used in fast fashion, I'm using it there.
Exactly.
Then, I absolutely agree that could work, and that's a really interesting idea and viewpoint going down. But really, it has to be specific for that area.
Yeah, I agree. I'm sure the conversations will keep developing over time and we'll get more absurd questions like that and debates. But let's just see where the journey takes us. But thank you so much for sharing your journey with us. It's been really, really valuable, I'm sure, to everyone. Thank you for sharing your path and everything that you've developed from then to now. It's been really lovely speaking with you.
You too. Thank you for having me on.
Thank you.